Hey, Santrecheel, I'm so glad that you have joined me today, and so glad that you're a part of some of these video conversations that we're kind of doing through the quarantine. And doing that, you are a part of Living Waters International Church, and I know everyone at Living Waters usually by where they sit on Sunday morning in different places of the auditorium. And so I'm just so glad that you joined us, because I can picture you and your boys when they're in the auditorium with you, if they're not at Living Waters Kids, on the second row to my right every
Right.
Sunday in doing that. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing very good. Today is one of those days where things are just a little bit more peaceful. It's not as demanding today. So today is a
Okay.
good day.
Let me ask you this, and this is what I'm asking everybody. How has this whole quarantine situation kind of been for you, and how are you just going through this? As a mother, as a professional, and all of that, how are you kind of going? And then also tell us a little bit about yourself and allow other people to get a chance to get to know you.
Yeah, no problem. So again, my name is Santrecheel Graham, and I do attend Living Waters Church. As far as the quarantine goes, it's been kind of up and down, a little bit stressful, and I didn't even realize it was stressful to me until I just started to feel tired and just have a whole lot of conflicts and things happening with my body. So it's been stressful overall. But for the most part, I'm really happy to be able to have uninterrupted time with my kids, and to really just kind of connect with them on a different level instead of just kind of like managing them, so to speak, like, fixing dinner or getting clothes ready for the next day. Like, we don't have any of those schedule. It's not on a strict schedule right now. So I would say that is an upside of the quarantine situation. But I guess more of like a downside is that there is a certain level of stress that comes with it, because I'm trying to maintain some level of sanity and to also manage the things that are still required of me as far as teaching goes. And that's just a whole nother conversation, because virtual teaching and virtual learning, it can be a gift, but then again, it can be a challenge.
Yeah, let me just commend you as well as all the other educators who have, within a 24-hour period, turned this thing around for,
Right,
everybody had to, and everyone had to change, and it was quick how
right.
everyone had to change. But most importantly, our teachers and our schools had to switch over. You are an educator and you teach. Could you share what grade you teach?
Yeah, so I teach pre-kindergarten this year.
Okay. All
Yes.
right. And
And
how
so
many?
that's pretty much where the challenge is coming in at, because the students who I've connected with this year, little children, they learn through doing and
Yeah.
playing and all of those things. And so you can't really get that same connection or that same doing feeling through a screen. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of hard teaching different concepts where they would be better off taught in person.
Yeah. I reckon it's kind of hard to teach pre-Ks through a computer, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
On that.
Yes, it
I think we were in a previous group discussion before where a lot of the educators, there were other educators that were on there, and they were asking, do you like online or not online? And I think you said, no, I'd rather be in the classroom. And
right.
now that I know you teach pre-K, I can understand that.
Right.
What tell us a little bit about your salvation experience. How did you come to know Christ and become a follower of Christ, and kind of like what led to where you're at today spiritually in your spiritual formation and things like that?
Absolutely. So I grew up in the church. My dad is a minister. My mom sung in the choir. So one of the things that we were required to do is to actually go to church every single Sunday. So I don't think that I missed many Sundays as a child. I did start to miss Sundays once I grew up and got out on my own, and I can make those decisions for
Yeah.
myself. And so I just kind of went through life in that format. So a lot of the teaching that I received just about who God was and Jesus and all of those things that happened in my earlier years in life. As far as like me making that personal connection with who God is in my personal life, I often say that that didn't really happen to me until around 2018.
Okay.
Even having all of this time growing up in the church and knowing the Bible stories and all those things, I don't think that I actually had a face-to-face with God, so to speak, until 2018.
Wow.
And that was more around because I was going through a divorce in that same year, and everything that I had known about life changed.
Wow.
And I spent a lot of time just really trying to put my life back together and figure out, okay, where do I go from here? Because everything before 2018 kind of fell in line. You know, I went to church, you know, you go to school, you go to college, everything just kind of lined up the way it's supposed to, I guess, line up. But 2018 kind of swiveled my life in a way where, you know, here I am in this divorce, and that's not a part of my ultimate plan. And so I think that I really had to really consult God and just say, Lord, you know, I'm trying to figure out what it is that I do from here. What does all of this mean as far as the direction you want me to take and all of those things. And so it's not that I had never, I guess, prayed before that point, but I don't think that I really took having a relationship with God as seriously until I was literally just a pope of a person and trying to just figure out what do I do for myself and my kids. So I just remember I did a lot of journaling during that time, and during the time that I went through a divorce, it was I was in the state of Alabama. So I'm from Georgia. I graduated from Georgia State and all of those things. I got married in Georgia, but we all moved to the state of Alabama so that I can continue with my career. And when everything kind of went awry, I remember journaling. I was working with a co-worker. She was actually a co-teacher at a Birmingham City school that I was working at, and she used to always journal throughout the day. And so I was in a pre-kindergarten class then, and when the students went down, she would always journal. And I remember asking her about, like, what are you writing? And those were her prayers. And so that kind of, at the time when I started to go through what I went through, I was reminded of that. And so I actually started to journal and pray or write down my prayers in the journal. And that was very helpful for me because it was good for me to be able to track what it is that I was petitioning God for, or to remind myself what are the things that I was praying for. And so, and I remember it was one of those things that I wrote in there was, Lord, like, whatever it is that's getting ready to take place in my life, whatever I'm dealing with, I just know that I want to know you for who you are, and to position me in such a way in my life that once I start this journey of getting to know you, I don't want to have any, I guess, leeway or ability to turn back. And I didn't say it in those words. I would have to read the journal entry, of course, but I just remember asking God that whatever is getting ready to happen, I do not want to start this, go backwards, and then have to start over again. And since 2018, I've been committed to that, and God has definitely been by my side and committed to me.
Wow. Would you say that before 2018, that period of your divorce was probably the darkest period of
I
your
would
life?
say that. And I've been through many things in my life. I mean, you guys probably already know this, but I had my first child when I was 17. You know what I mean? I was a young person.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so Cameron is my oldest, and I had him when I was a teenager, and Cameron's not that old, and I'm not that old. A lot of people ask me, like, how old are you? And then when I tell them how old I am, it was like, I thought you was much older, but no, I've been through some things,
Wow.
you know. So I've had some dark periods, but I do think that me going through what I went through as far as the marriage and divorce it was a super dark moment that really brought my eyes to God fully.
Yeah. During that season, how did God reveal himself to you during that dark period?
Yes. So I was a part of a church. It's a large church in Birmingham where the pastor, he's very known for his going out into community and helping people and those type of things. And so I did plug into a lot of what it is that he was doing as far as like community acts and just weekly Bible studies and church services and things like that. And in that time, it brought me to meet some people who were what would you call mental health workers, other people who were just beginning their journey with God and things like that. So I think that he revealed himself to me through the people who I met.
Mhm.
Because it was always someone who always had an encouraging word or some practical thing that they could give me for whatever question that I had or for whatever situation that I was facing. I did have, I guess from January to June 2018, I spent, I guess not to be so dramatic, but that's how it felt to me. I spent 6 months in solitude,
Okay.
where it was just me. And so I couldn't run to anybody or do anything, I couldn't drown out anything with distractions. And so I just remember being in Birmingham for those 6 months, kind of by myself and journaling and just, I watch TV here and there, but I do think that God showed up in the room with me through prayer and all of those things even during those 6 months that I was just kind of by myself.
Yeah. I had a conversation. People who are watching this could look at the previous video because that would have we've already released that by the time this airs. Talking with our missionaries yesterday, the Calixes, we're talking about the quarantine period, and I would assume that this period for you is something similar to that solitude time that you spent before, and how and you said you don't mean to be dramatic. I really think it's healthy to go away and to spend moments away. It's very healthy for us, and a part of this that our society is going through right now. If we could, and you've probably heard me say this many times through various meetings and small groups you've been a part of, if we can lean in during this time to this moment, and maybe this has been God prescribed for his people to kind of just get all of the noise out of our
Right.
life and to bring the solitude and the peace and the quietness in us, that he wants us to have,
Right.
uh, what I reckon you could say. I have two questions for you right now before we go on. Is what was the predominant thing that you learned during that season of solitude? And then I want to make sure, this is my question just to you personally. Please tell me you still have those journals.
I do.
Okay, good. Don't ever throw those away, ever, because those. I was sharing yesterday. Who was I sharing? I shared this with someone just yesterday, and I was talking about. I was taught, and I'm trying to find, and I have for years trying to find. When David said that rod and their staff comfort me, that in the old way of shepherding, when God did something for shepherds, they would take a knife and a rock or whatever, and they would mark their staff in order to remember what God had done in their life. And so, with that today, that's today's journaling, and with that, so you're able to go back on those journals and be able to see what God was doing in your life at that moment, and that way you're able to, just to remember and see where God did. And so whenever that shepherd would come up against a bear or a lion or an enemy, I mean, whatever, he could look back on his staff and lean on that staff going, God, I remember when you brought me through this dark period, and God, you're going to bring me through this. So I'm glad that you haven't thrown those away. Good. Don't ever throw those away. Don't ever, because from that is that's like your Bethel. That's where you wrestle with God about things that matters. You wrestle with God. So go ahead.
Right.
I was saying, what was the thing that you just kind of learned about God during that time, or what did God show himself to you through that self-imposed quarantine, if we could use that today, of solitude through that?
Right. I think that God brought me, I mean, there are many lessons that I learned in that time and I'm continuing to learn. But I think one of the biggest things that is sticking out to me now is that God taught me how to depend on him. He taught me how to depend on him first and foremost. I've always been one of those persons that's been, I guess, titled like independent. I can do a lot of things. I can manage this, and I can just do a whole lot. But I just think that God kind of allowed things to happen so that I kind of ran out of myself in a sense. Like I came to the end of myself. And so when I kind of hit a brick wall in many ways, I was like, well, I don't know what to do. There's nothing, I can't plan my way out of this, or I can't donate my way out of this, or I can't talk my way out of this, or I can't even educate myself out of this. Like, this is something that's beyond me, you know? And so I think that he allowed me to come to the end of myself and say, okay, now you're ready. You know, now you're ready to see me for who I am. There's nothing you can do in your human power. And so I think from that, I'm always just reminded of that to seek God first and to depend on him, because everything comes through him and from him.
Yeah, yeah. How would you encourage a new believer today that, not just a new believer, what would you encourage the person that is going through divorce now, because it's something like you said something earlier, you said, and I'm just paraphrasing, like you had visioned your life this way and it had been going, and then this happened and it was like a car accident. I mean, it disrupted everything. And your whole thoughts of how your life was going to go forward just took an immediately right-hand turn, and it just knocked everything out of whack. And I was just sharing over the weekend with someone about how we can really, what happens when those kind of things come into our life after we had in our mind assumed that things will work out a certain way. And what would you say to someone like that, or a new believer, and they're going through a hard time, or to share with someone who's going through a dark period in their time? What would you like to say to them today?
Right. I would definitely say to a new believer, is God will meet you where you are. I would definitely say the things of, trust God and all those things. But I think that saying God will meet you where you are is much more profound, because it's been something that's kind of carried me. A lot of times we think that when we come to God, we have to do a certain thing or be a certain way, or we have to have accomplished A, B, and C before we even get up the courage to pray. And that is not true, and so I do believe that God has a foundation of the way he wants us to live our lives, but I do think that everything is progress. And so I do think that if getting to know God or beginning this journey is something that's new for someone who may not have invested in that before now, I would encourage them to stick with it, because it is something where God will meet you where you are. You don't have to necessarily be you don't have to be perfect at all. It's not even necessary. You don't have to be perfect at all. You know what I mean? I think God cares so much about who we are that we don't have to put on any mask or pretend that we're something that we're not. God already just knows who we are. And so I think that that's would be the first thing that I would say to somebody who's a new believer, is that, just come to him as you are. You don't have to have any eloquent speech or anything like that that we kind of learn coming up. Just take off everything. God already knows, and just be who you are, and he will meet you where you are.
Absolutely. Let me ask you, what is a verse that has gotten you through most of the things that you've gone through, or one that you stand on, maybe your life verse? What is that verse is mine and this is what I identify with, or anything like that? What is that, Santrecheel?
Yes, it's in the book of Psalms. There's a verse that says, I will remain confident that I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. And that's in the book of Psalms. That has just been a verse that has just stuck with me. There are a couple other verses that I really love, but that verse is encouraging to me, especially during times where I might feel down or I feel like things aren't working out the way I want to. I'm just like, you know what? It's going to be all good. I'm going to see the goodness of the Lord. I'm just going to remain confident. So that's one of those verses that I think will stick with me for the rest of my life.
Yes, I know I've heard you share that before, that's so encouraging. I know that you're part of the Gauntlet at Living Waters International Church, and let me just share with those who don't know about the Gauntlet. It's a group of people that have teamed up together who have chosen to go through the Bible in 2020. And I just say, Sam, you are knocking it out of the park. You're doing so good. You're knocking it out of the park with that. You're knocking it out of the park with your motherhood. You're knocking it out of the park as a student, because I know you're in master's level program, and you're just doing really good. Be proud of yourself, because you're doing some great things. And I'm going to reiterate, and I'm putting this on video, that I know God's hand is upon your life. You know what I want to say? God's hand is upon your life, and he's called you for such a time as this. And I pray that I'm able just to help you find and cultivate that calling that he has for you, because I see it so many times in some of the things that come out through online conversations, through small group conversations and things like that. I see it, and I am encouraging you to cultivate that, because, and this is why we want to do this video, because I know you got a story to tell. Your story is powerful to help so many other people that have walked the same path that you have walked. The dark valleys, the low valleys, and on top of that, let them know there are mountaintops on the horizon. Just keep walking through this, and that one thing you can say, and this is one thing I know about you, saying that you are confident that the goodness of the Lord is in you and will follow you all the days of your life. And I know that God wants to use you to inspire confidence in other people. So, and just to be able to do that. Sam, thank you so much for sharing a moment with us today. I pray that this has been an encouragement to everyone out there that's watching this. Thank you so much, Living Waters, for looking at this. God bless you, Sam, and thank you for all that you do for Living Waters and the people at Living Waters International Church. God bless you, everybody.
Thank you.